Hey guys, Mark with Precision Computing. I just received this acrylic strip heater. It's actually a plastic strip heater. It'll work with plastic, acrylic plexiglass from Delvey's Plastics. And I bought the large one. So it's about 33 inches. I figured that'd be pretty much large enough for anything I need to do with it. For case windows, for power supply shrouds, any other little pieces I may need to make. Up to even full cases. I might work on making some, custom cases out of acrylic, things like that. This should make things a little bit easier than using a heat gun. I did some testing recently. This is 1/4 inch fluorescent green, and I actually did this with a torch. And while the end bend looks nice, it did overheat the acrylic a little bit, and it kind of bulged it out at the ends. So I'm curious to see what this acrylic strip heater will do with the same acrylic. And then I also have some 1/4 inch clear, and I have some 1/8 inch clear. So I'm going to test and kind of get a feel for some heating times, how long it's going to take to heat these things up, and just kind of get a feel for the tool itself. I haven't used it yet. I haven't even turned it on yet. I do have it plugged in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to let the tool heat up because it needs a couple minutes to do that. I'm going to reposition the camera so that you guys will be looking at the tool and the work surface that I'll be working on. And let's bend some acrylic. Stay tuned. Alright, so before we get it fully hot, just so you guys can see here, there's a little bit of smoke coming out of the machine. As the heating element heats up for the first time. Just wanted to note that to you guys in case you guys go out and buy one. It is a nice powder coated finish on the surface itself. You can see a couple label stickers here. Caution, work surface may be hot. You can work from either side, except on this side here we see our on off switch and also our LED indicator showing us that the tool is on, and so we're getting some heat coming through here. Like I said, just a little bit of smoke, but I'm sure that's totally normal for that heating element heating up the first time. So we're going to go ahead and let it get a little bit warmer. I can see the actual element itself kind of burning in a little bit. Looks pretty nice. It's getting some nice heat coming out of here now. We'll go ahead and let that heat a little bit, and we'll be right back. I just wanted to get that smoke coming out of there so that if you guys do purchase one of these units and that happens, you don't freak out and think it's something unusual or that shouldn't happen. So stay tuned, and we'll be bending some acrylic. Alright, so now that our acrylic strip heater has heated up, I keep calling it an acrylic strip heater, but I shouldn't call it that because it could be acrylic, it could be plexiglass, plastic. Let's just call it our strip heater. It does make a slight buzzing noise. I'm not sure if the video will pick that up or not. But with that being said, let's go ahead and put down our scrap piece of 1/4 inch here. And I'm going to do this live so you guys have an idea of how long it's going to take to heat these pieces up. So I don't want this necessarily just to be a video to say, oh look, I have a new tool. But I also want you guys to get an idea of the time that it's going to take to heat the different thicknesses of acrylic. So this is 1/4 inch that's on the tool right now. So I'm going to monitor it, and it should be just like PET. I should be able to see when the acrylic starts to get soft. So most of the time what I would do is I would have the paper backing still on one side so that I could make a mark and make sure that I had my acrylic straight on the tool. Maybe put a clamp or something on one side just to hold it so that it stays in the same place initially, especially if you're trying to get a nice tight 90-degree, like nice corner bend like this here for a power supply shroud or something. If you're doing something with a little bit more of a flexible bend available, it might not be as important. You could heat a little bit of a larger area. But with that being said, most of the time we're trying to get nice tight bends. So I'm just going to leave this in the same spot that it's at and see how long it takes this acrylic to heat up. Looks like we're going on just over a minute now. So this is a good time testing tool for me also, because we don't want to leave the acrylic on there to where it gets too hot and it could start melting or bubbling. We want to get it just warm enough so that we have the flexibility to bend the acrylic. So knowing where that threshold is, we could put a piece of acrylic on the tool and kind of watch it from a distance rather than be hovering over it and waiting for it to heat up. So it's always good to know what the tool can do that you're working with, so that you can optimize not only your time working with a single piece, but also the energy needed to output to these machines, and so that we don't get the acrylic too hot and get any bubbling. With the fluorescent acrylic like this, you're not going to paint it, you're not going to do anything to it. You're going to see it, it's going to be nice and clear. You might paint a design or something, but those bends most of the time you're going to see. So if there's any bubbling in the acrylic, it's going to be visible. And most of the time when I make my power supply shrouds, I like to bend the acrylic and then paint from the backside, so that we have a nice glossy clear finish over the top. So even if for the 1/8 inch here, if we were to get it too hot and bend it, or 3/16 or 1/4 inch, and you painted from the backside, you'd still see those bubbles. So we might want to make sure that we only get enough heat in the acrylic to make our bend. It's starting to get flexible now. So we're about 3 minutes in on this 1/4 inch acrylic. You don't want to try to bend it too soon also, because it could crack. So you got to have just the right amount of heat so that you don't get bubbling and that you're not going to crack the piece that you're working on. I do have some 3/16 acrylic that I ordered also. Delby's Plastic is usually where I buy most of my acrylics. I don't buy in bulk enough that their prices are reasonably fair. Their shipping's always been good. Their products always come undamaged. So, and they have just about everything you need for acrylic. They have your acrylic cements, your polishes. It's getting close now. I would say probably another minute on this and we'll be able to make our bend. So it looks like we're right at about 4 minutes. So at about the 5-minute mark, which is kind of what I was anticipating, this acrylic will be flexible enough to make our bend. So the one nice thing that I'll say about this too, over like using a heat gun, is if you have a longer piece of acrylic, say you're bending a power supply shroud, you could have a power supply shroud this long. The nice thing about this is you can set this down like this, and the whole length of your shroud will be heating at the same time. So you're not going to have any spots that are not going to have enough heat. Now you can see here, as we're getting enough heat in this, the acrylic is actually starting to bow in the center, and you can see that in the video. You can see it starting to bow up because the weight of the acrylic is starting to pull it down at the ends. So that's about when we're going to see that we have enough heat in our acrylic that we should be able to take this just like that. Make our perfect 90-degree bend. Of course, I'm just doing this freehand and I'm holding it in the air. This is a demonstration so you guys can see what I'm doing here. You could take it over a 90-degree surface if you wanted to make sure you had that tight 90-degree bend. But I'm not so much worried about that, as in just showing you how this tool works and how efficient it is. Now you can see the acrylic there is still nice and clear. There's no warping. There's no bubbling. As opposed to over here where I heated it with a torch, we can see some warping, we can see some bubbling in spots. So I'm going to hold that. You can see it's still flexible till we get a really nice bend on there, which it's starting to regain its temperature now. A lot of times I'll have a fan, even when I'm doing tubing, blowing just so that it helps cool the piece back down. But I don't want to do that right now to have the noise disrupt the video. You can see here that I actually did a really excellent job. And we have our nice 90-degree bend. We don't have too much edge rollover from the piece. So like here you can see how much this edge bulged out. You have a little of that, which I anticipated with a 1/4 inch piece. But there we go. Our piece is back to having its rigidity now. But man, that's really going to save some time. 5 minutes. And again, this was just a small thin strip, just to get an idea of how the tool worked. 5 minutes. That was 1/4 inch. Let's put a piece of 1/8 inch on here, and let's make it a little bit wider. Now we're not really going to see our piece sag like we did with the 1/4 inch, because there's not a lot of overhang on this. So there's not going to be a lot of weight pulling this down once the center gets warm. So with a piece that's smaller like this, we're going to have to watch it more. But I'm curious to see how well the element right in this channel here heats up the center of this acrylic. And we should be able to, like I said, if you're here watching your piece, you should be able to see when it starts to gain that that flexibility. You should see the plastic start to ripple a little bit. The acrylic, I should say. And I would imagine that for 1/8 inch, it's not just going to take half the time that the 1/4 inch did. It's probably going to take less than that. So I would say maybe 1.5 to 2 minutes to heat this 1/8 inch acrylic, so that we can bend it without any kind of warping or cracking or bubbles, so that we don't overheat it. And there we go. So I didn't quite get a time frame on that, but man, that makes things really easy. So there's our 1/4 inch. Okay, and that, just doing it by hand, not on a nice tight edge where I'm holding anything tight against it. It's giving us a nice rolled edge. And look at that finish on there. Look at that finish on the acrylic. That's perfect. So, wow. I've gotten some really nice edges with the heat gun. You know, you got to work with it a little bit more. I've even used my metal bender and heated up the acrylic in the bender. But nothing quite as easy as this. This is just taking things to the next step. Alright, so I'm going to fast forward a little bit, because I'm going to put this longer piece of acrylic here over the center of the bender, and I'm going to let it sit for 5 minutes. I'm going to make a bend freehand. I'll come back in the video so you can see that we make the bend freehand. But I'm going to let this sit. I'm going to take the video away, and we'll be back in just a minute. Stay tuned. And welcome back, guys. We're at about the 3 to 3.5 minute mark. I've just left this piece of acrylic sitting here like this. I haven't touched it. We can kind of see that it's bowing up at the edges a little bit, but when we make our bend, that'll flatten that back out. So I'm not too concerned with that. Curious as to where, okay, getting a little bit of flexibility in there, not enough yet. So we probably need about that extra minute, minute and a half to get to that full 5 minute mark or so that we have enough heat in our piece of acrylic. The other thing to take into consideration, when we bent this piece a 1/4 inch, it's a lot less surface area, so it may heat up a little faster than the larger piece will. But overall, I'm super impressed so far with this machine. I really can't say enough about it. That bend is beautiful, and most of the time with power supply shrouds, I've used 1/8 inch acrylic, and actually I'm going to start using 3/16, which is why I looked into this machine, just to give them a little bit more durability. Alright, and I can actually see down the center of the acrylic, I can see it starting to form that line where I want to make that bend. And we are getting a little bit of bubbling. So I'm going to go ahead and make this bend, if I can. See what happens. Now with something this large, this long, you know, like a power splash rod, you'd probably want to make a jig so that you got a nice tight bend, uniform all the way through. But as I said, I'm just doing some testing here. So I've got that piece bent. I'll hold it to about a 90. Give it a minute here to cool down. And I did have a little bit of bubbling in the center. I think I probably left it on there a little too long. So with that being said, the longer piece actually took less time to heat. But we got a nice bend. Uniform all throughout, and I just held that with my hands. You know, about a nice 90. And you can see we got a couple, see if I can get it in the photo here, in the video, a couple little bubbles right there. Really hard to notice. I mean, looking at it here, when I'm looking straight at it, I can see it. Again, it's something that you can watch. But how easy was that? It heated the whole thing perfect, under 5 minutes, make the bend, really beautiful bending. I'm very impressed with this machine. This surface does get hot, this metal on both sides of the heating element. I'm sure as the machine stays on longer, it's going to produce more and more heat. With that being said, I just wanted to say thanks for watching. And hopefully you guys can take something from this video. It's an acrylic strip heater. I got it from Delvies. This is a 33-inch unit. It was about $160 plus some shipping and tax and things like that. Overall, great investment. If you're going to be making a bunch of power splash rods, or even just one or two, or if you like the case mod, you're doing a few mods every year, it's definitely worth it because it's a tool that's going to last you a long time. It's going to make your work a lot easier. I always say that there's the right tool for the job. For making power splash rods, bending acrylic, this is it. Stay tuned for the next videos. We'll see you next time.